These are going to be your notes before the practice today on standard form. So far we have covered slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where you replace the slope and the y-intercept. We've also covered point slope, which is this long form, but it's essentially your point, x and y, and then your slope in the middle. And then you have standard form, where x and y are on the same side. And so sometimes we're given standard form, but we need to graph. So if we need to graph it, we may want to go back to slope-intercept so it's easier. Or sometimes we're given standard form and we need to use our calculator tool or calculator function in order to find out more information. Well, again, you would need to take it all the way back to slope-intercept. But then there are other times when you are given things in this form or this form, and you need to be able to solve it with another line. And so you would need them both in standard form. And so we do have to be able to go back and forth between these, be able to switch between slope-intercept and standard and point slope and back to this and back to that. So we're going to practice a little bit of that today. The first thing we're going to do is tell whether each function is written in standard form. And then if it's not, we're going to write it in standard form. So looking at number 1, it doesn't look like it's in standard form because standard form is when x and y are on the same side. So no, this is not. But now we have to change it. Well, in order to be in standard form, x and y will have to be on the same side. So to move this x, I would have to subtract it because it's the inverse. Something interesting happens. You can't combine an x and a y. Well, when you can't combine something, you just bring those down. So this will say negative 3x and then positive y. And then over here, 3x minus 3x is 0. Many times we don't have to write the 0, but because there's nothing else over here, we should probably write the 0. So now we are in standard form. Through negative 3x plus y equals 0. That's how you make it look like this. So in number 2, that definitely doesn't look like standard form. So no, I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it to where it is in standard form. Which means I'm going to have to move things from left to right, right to left, all over the place. And the only way to move things around is to do the inverse of them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put this x over here because I know that x and y have to be on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 5x on both sides. Very interesting. We have an x, we have a y, we have a constant, different. You cannot put those together. And when you cannot put them together, you bring them down. So bring down the negative 5x, bring down your positive 7, bring down your negative y. Here I get 0. This time I don't have to write the 0 though, because I also have 11. Still not quite there, because I got this random number right here. I think the only way to move that is to do the inverse of it. Luckily, these are both constants. And then bring down what you haven't messed with. So it looks like a lot, but essentially all you're doing is picking and choosing what you want to move. And then as soon as you know what you want to move, just do the opposite of it. And then pick something else and do the opposite of it. And then eventually you will get there to where x and y are on the same side. And then, or put C instead of 4. And then your number, or C, because it is your letter C, is over on the right. Number 3, we can't just pick something yet. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is distribute. It's not in standard form. So let me rewrite it. And I'm going to put my little elevator around the equal sign just to make it easier to notice between the two sides. And right away, I know I can't do any inverse because I have these parentheses right here. Now, x and y are on the same side, but it's not the only thing over here. So I need to make sure I fix this. Very first thing I'm going to do is distribute. I have to because it's being multiplied on the outside of these parentheses. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times y is negative 2y. And then I'm going to bring down my plus 9. If it wasn't for that plus 9, it looks like it would be pretty close to being in standard form. So let's move it. Let's do minus 9. 1 minus 9 would be negative 8. This makes 0, but I don't have to write 0 because I have other stuff over here. So I'm going to bring that stuff down. Now, I do want to make one note. I noticed that on all three of these, the a, which is your first in front of the x, it's your coefficient in front of your x, is negative. That is an issue. And we will talk about this issue at a later time, but we actually don't want this a to be negative. So ask your teacher in your Zoom conference or while you are in class what to do when this a is negative. So let's go to number 4. We are going to now write an equation in standard form, so just like this, for each line. There's a little kicker here. They've given me slope, and they've given me a point. Which of the forms up top would you have to write in if you're given a slope and a point? It would have to be point slope. So that means we're going to have to do some converting again, some moving around. We can't just jump straight to this, even though you want to. I have a lot of people who will put 3x plus 7y equals 6, and that's not at all what this is. So we will have to start somewhere else, and that's okay. So let's start with point slope. We've got a point and a slope. So here's our x, here's our y. Let's put our template in. And now we can plug in. So our slope is 6, slope goes in the middle. And then your x goes with x, and your y goes with y. Now we're not done because it didn't ask for it in point slope. It asked for it in standard. So we're going to have to convert. So remember back here, when we had these parentheses, the very first thing we had to do was get rid of that. So we are going to do the exact same thing up here. So we're going to do 6 times x, which is 6x. 6 times negative 3, which is negative 18. And then you're going to bring down. Now, I really want the x and y on the same side, so let's just pick something and move it. You can pick anything you want, but I want to pick this because I really want the x over here. So you're going to subtract 6x. X does not match y. It doesn't match a constant. This is all different. When it's all different, just bring it down. Positive y, negative 7. So close. The only thing keeping us from standard form is this negative 7. So let's move that now. And then from there we have negative 6x plus y equals negative 11. Don't forget to ask your teacher about that negative a term, that negative in front of the number that's in front of the x. Once again, I'm given point slope. See if you can do this one on your own. Go ahead and hit pause, and then you can walk through it with me. All right, so let's get set up here. So y minus a box equals a box times x minus a box. And now I'm going to plug stuff in. So if my slope is negative 1, that goes in the middle. X goes with x. Y goes with y. Let's change this without the boxes. I don't have to change any signs. This is good news. It makes it a little easier. Now let's start getting this to standard. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. -1 times -2, +2. Woo, I really want to move that x so I can get it to standard. Add x. None of those are the same. So if they're not the same, bring them all down. So close. I just got to move that -5. So let's add 5 on both sides. And we're there. X and Y are on the same side. Actually, this one's really nice because your A term isn't negative. Sweet. Let's go to the next one. Hit pause. You do this one on your own. All right, so we've got Y minus a box equals a box times X minus a box. Now, if you did this one on your own, like I asked you to, then you shouldn't need to pause the video to copy unless you're fixing errors. That's the perk of like doing these on your own. Then you can just fast forward. So your slope is 9. Put your X with your X and your Y with your Y. Now, when we rewrite this one, something cool happens. Right here, I'm going to take you back 6th grade here. Minus a negative or 2 negatives make a positive. So that's how come sometimes in point slope you have X plus instead of X minus. It's because that value that was in that box was negative, so it switched everything around on you. But we really want this in standard form. So let's distribute. 9 times X is 9X. 9 times 5 is positive 45. And bring down. Really want to move that X over. So I'm going to subtract 9X. That's different, that's different, that's different. These are not the same. So when they're not the same, you just bring them down. Positive Y, -2. Got a 0 here again, but this time I have 45 to fill its place, so I don't need to put 0. So close. I just got to move that -2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And I have -9X, oh, bummer on the negative A, positive Y, and 47. So just a note, you are going to want to ask your teacher in your Zoom conference or your live Zoom class or while you're in class what to do about those negative A's, because you really need to make that positive for it to be truly in standard form. So flip that over. Let's look at this graph on the back. We are going to graph the line of each equation. So the first thing I want to do is put this in a form that's easy to graph. And the very first form you learned is the easiest form to graph in, and that would be slope-intercept. So if we can change this to where y is by itself, then we will know the y-intercept and we will know the slope. And we can make a 3-column table to find all of our points. So there's a lot of stuff we can do with this. So let's go ahead and try to change that. So we've got, I'm going to come over here on the left of this paper. X minus 2y equals 6. I'm going to use this line as my divider, my elevator. Well, I know I need y by itself. So the very first thing I'm going to move is this x. I'm going to get rid of that x by subtracting it. And then I'm going to bring down my negative 2y. People always forget that sign. I don't know why, but it belongs to the 2. So let's bring it down. Oh, the only thing keeping us from that y being by itself is that -2 that's attached. So when you want to get that y by itself, you divide. So we're going to divide both sides by -2. Now here, this might look confusing, but essentially what you're doing is you are dividing 6 divided by -2, which is -3. And then you're also dividing this -1 divided by -2. You just bring that x down, but the number is going to come from the -1 divided by -2, which is just +1/2, +1/2. So now we have, and if we make a 3-column table, this will make a lot more sense. Now we have our y-intercept, which is 0, -3. And then we just need one more point to make a line. So let's put that denominator in there so we can get a clean number. So we've got -3 plus 1/2, and let's plug that 2 in. And you just type that in your calculator, and you should get -2. So here is our line. Just connect the dots. If you wanted to put that 4 in to make sure that it really did cross at that -1, you can plug it in, type it into your calculator, and sure enough, you would get -1. So now you try number 8, and then you'll be able to check your answer. Follow those same steps. So hopefully you made it through to getting y by itself, and then you may have gotten stuck here. So I noticed that right away, my y-intercept is a fraction. So that's kind of unusual. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 2 other points to plot so that way I can connect those dots. So I'm going to start with the denominator again, and I'm just going to plug that into this equation and then type it in my calculator. So it looks like I got 2/3. Not quite as clean as I would want, but that's okay. So I'm going to go over to 3. And if I go all the way up to this line right here, I'd be at 1. But I just want to go 2 out of 3 in this space. So that's above half. So that's about right there. I'm going to pick another number. I'm going to go with -4. I just want something over here. Plug that into my equation. And then I'm going to type it into my calculator. This is going to be one messy equation, and that is okay. So I'm going to put 16 over 3. Let's change that to a decimal. So 16 divided by 3. So it's a little bit more than 5. So I'm going to go to -4. And then I'm going to go up to 5. And then I'm just going to go a little bit more because that's what my decimal was. And then I'm going to just connect these dots here. So I think the purpose of this graph is just to make sure that when you get these messy numbers here, don't stress about this. Just do your best to estimate the placement on the line, change it to a decimal. Then you'll kind of see between which we know that 5.33 is between 5 and 6. So just make sure you plot between 5 and 6 kind of thing. So don't stress about this. It will work out. So let's go to number 9. Joe was filling a swimming pool with water at a constant rate of 300 gallons per hour. So right away, I know that this is like 300 gallons per hour. And he's filling it. So he's going up by that much. The pool had 25 gallons before it started. Well, the starting point of anything is also known as the y-intercept. So I'm going to put that here. And this says to write the equation in standard form. Well, this doesn't look like standard form. This kind of looks like slope-intercept. Let's change that h to an x. And then suddenly it starts to look like something we can move around. If I just move this x over here, I would get -300x, positive y, and then 25. And sure enough, I've got x and y on the same side in one step. Number 10, a grocery bag containing 6 potatoes weighs 4 pounds. An identical bag that contains 8 potatoes weighs 5 pounds. Write an equation in standard form that shows the relationship of the weights. Let's see, weight is y, so 5 pounds is a y, 5y. Number of potatoes, x, 8 potatoes, so 8x. And they're identical. In math, what sign do we use for things that are identical? Hopefully you said equals. This is a positive 5y because that's a positive 5. Oh, 6 potatoes. Potatoes is x, 6x. Pounds is weight, 4 pounds, 4y. And the kicker was that they were identical. And so that's how I know to put it in equals. And it doesn't ask me to move anything. So I'm just going to let that sit right there, and then you guys can move on into your practice.